Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Alaska Entrepreneurship Week. Hopefully you've been attending some other events occurring this week. There's over 100 events across the state of Alaska in many different programs. And today is at this idea stage of entrepreneurship. We're going to be talking about I-Corps and what is the I-Corps program, what is the I-Corps hub that myself and Dave here from University of California Berkeley are representing. And we also have Kieran Norton from UAF Center for Innovation, Commercialization and Entrepreneurship supporting us as the moderating person. So if you've got any questions for myself or Dave, then please drop those into the Q&A process, and Kieran will be able to either respond or make sure that I'm prompted for any questions that are brought up. We'll get going in a few minutes as a few more people start attending. We are obviously recording this, and we'll make sure that this is shared through the YouTube channel that we have as part of Sunrise. So Dave, would you like to introduce yourself briefly? And as we have more people arriving, so I'll pass the microphone over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me here. It's so wonderful to be part of this. Welcome all. My name's Dave Weiner. I am the program director for NSF I-Corps at UC Berkeley. But that also means I'm a very, very close colleague with my friend Peter with what's called the NSF I-Corps Hub Northwest. UC Berkeley, University of Alaska Fairbanks are partners with this hub. So we provide I-Corps courses, entrepreneurship training. You'll learn a lot more about that in just a minute. All throughout the Northwest region. That stretches from Northern California all the way up north, Washington, Oregon to Alaska. So it's really, really fun to be here. This partnership has been wonderful, and I'm excited to connect with more entrepreneurs from Alaska.
Great. Well, thank you, Dave. And now a minute or so past the top, so we'll get going with today's session. So we're here as part of Alaska Entrepreneurship Week, so akew.org. As I said, I found out today that we're actually at 110 events of some sort around business development, entrepreneurship in Alaska. Everything from webinars from the East Coast that are here at 5 a.m. in Alaska to 8 p.m. open events across the state for businesses. We'll have an open event at our Makerspace on Thursday, all the way through till the end of the week. So 5 a.m. till 8 p.m. Alaska time. Just anything and everything to support our entrepreneurs where they are in their journey, and the ability to showcase businesses, whether they're a traditional brick and mortar type of business all the way through to software as a service, where you might have a complete online user base and a complete online community that wants or has a need for the solution that you're building towards. So Dave mentioned that the two of us are part of the Northwest Region I-Corps Hub. And there's a number of other institutions that are with us on this journey. And Dave is at the University of California Berkeley, that is the lead for this Northwest hub. And then we're collaborating with 8 other institutions across the Northwest, from Alaska to Central and Southern California. You heard from Dave as he was introducing himself. I myself am here at University of Alaska Fairbanks at the Trotieta campus in the interior of Alaska. And I'm the faculty and instructor lead for the I-Corps Hub training program here at UAF, and was also the instructor for the I-Corps site that we held here at UAF as we transitioned from being a site to a hub. And we'll explain a little bit about what a hub means when in terms of the I-Corps program. So what is I-Corps and what is the Northwest Region I-Corps Hub? So we're a collaboration of institutions, one of 13 hubs across the nation. And I think if I remember rightly, Dave, at the national event we went to in DC, there was over 130 institutions in the United States that have I-Corps programming available to its faculty, staff, and students, and community members, community teams around where they are based geographically. It's all about early stage entrepreneurship. It's about how you go through this customer discovery process to focus on who are you building towards, what actually are their needs, rather than building everything and then opening the door and going, hey, does anybody want this? It's finding that out as you're going through the development, maybe even before you developed a minimum viable product. It's like finding out what is the challenge that you see is needed by your potential end users, getting them to tell you the story of what they have as their everyday job that they need to get completed. We provide this as part of a federal grant for the National Science Foundation. So therefore, it's free for those that submit and meet the criteria to join one of these cohorts. It varies in length between the institutions, but its focus is to get those 20 customer discovery interviews in that time frame, but at the same time, getting valuable insights to where you see your solution. You're not going to sell them the solution. What you're doing is you're getting them to tell you through those stories what they need as a must-have solution to their challenge. They're probably getting around the issue with some form of workaround because they're doing something to get through that challenge, but you might have the best solution for them, but you may not, and you may need to tweak that. So rather than selling them the product, is you get them to tell you what their challenges are, and they will inform you what is the must-have component of what that solution would be. We're also connected to the National I-Core program, and therefore, through going through a regional program and a regional course, through recommendations and evaluations by the hub team, could be a team that is successful in getting to the national level. And that's a benefit of being through a regional program, is that pipeline of going from regional to national and on to SBIR and STTR funds from the federal agencies. The I-Core philosophy, it's all about desire. There's bottom right-hand side, this is known as the business model canvas, but it's all about focusing on that right-hand side. Before you even think about, oh, do I need to bring this partner on board to develop my solution? My question would be, and Dave's probably is, why is that partner involved? Who is that partner bringing a value to your developed solution? Because some customer segment needs that product. You don't want to pick a partner and then find out you're developing something towards a no need. So you focus in that top right-hand side, the desire of like, who is your customer? What is their need? What is the challenge they face? What's the biggest problem that they have? And that you might speak to an end user, a person that would use your solution. You might speak to a decision maker, somebody that makes the choice that that organization or that needs that product. You might speak to somebody that can help you determine the cost of a solution to that challenge. All of these are different players in the ecosystem that you would go through and that you would talk to as you're doing this validated learning and capturing insights. So what I wanted to do is have a conversation with Dave. The two of us have ran programs. We've even, I think, probably gone through programmings like this when we were in our academic environment, now that we're in the sort of administrative and the sort of providing the service roles. So I guess my first question is maybe to you, Dave, is what are some of the aha moments that you've seen as you've worked with a number of teams and Berkeley has a pretty like a monthly programming available. What are some of the aha moments that you've seen that have maybe teams have completely changed their approach, or they've seen a big difference because they've spoken to end users rather than thinking they've got the best product since sliced bread?
Yeah, and the amazing thing about this is every single time there's a course and we go through it, you see these aha moments, which is just when the light bulb goes off and the trajectory totally changes. That's something I really love about the I-Core process, is sort of the magic of it. And once you experience it, you see that it's really quite remarkable. But it happens all the time. I was on a team who had like a diagnostic for chronic disease. The inventor was a doctor. He thought doctors would love it. It used AI to be a sort of a more rapid diagnostic. So in some ways, like who wouldn't want that, you think? But as he started to talk to the doctors that he expected to love it, they actually found that they almost were threatened by it. Hey, wait a minute! I'm a doctor. I have an MD. You want to replace me with this AI algorithm? And so he was like, "Oh, I did." He actually hadn't thought about that perspective, and But as he really heard it turned out that in fact, in no way were they ready to adopt this technology. They definitely weren't going to advocate for it. They weren't going to pay for it. And so he ended up finding a better customer group for it. But that if he had built it out and tried to sell, with having doctors as the advocates and the end users, it would have completely fizzled. So that was like a very powerful thing that happened. I can share another example, but I don't know,
Yeah,
Peter,
please do.
maybe you've
No,
had.
no, no. I think, yeah, I think mine's and similar outcomes is we had a team that went through our site program. As we said, we've just kicked off the hub January
Mhm,
this year, but we had a team in the site program that was obviously following the same philosophy, and they changed not their industry, but the
mhm,
types of companies that they were going to for the developed technology that they were building out. They were building out a software as a service tool for companies to build virtual environments for training. And they found that it was the type of company, the size of the company was more viable, that they were thinking that some of the companies and the types of companies they were going to weren't as interested in it because they had the revenue to do that. Whereas
mhm,
the mid-sized organizations that needed something specialized and maybe had very specialist equipment, and they didn't have the expertise every time to get people trained up to understand the sort of
mhm,
mechanics of the system, that's where their sweet point was for
mhm,
their first market of where they could produce the product. Is
mhm,
they were getting those people to tell them the story about how they do their training, and that changed not that they saw they still had a business approach, but the type of company that they would go to, they would be like a contractor for those organizations because what they thought was the company, some of the bigger companies, they could do it themselves. And as a result, they wouldn't be a viable model to beat out their own existing team
mhm,
to do it. But it scaled them to where is the beachhead market, the greatest ROI for their marketing once the product was operationally ready to be implemented. So that discussion was they were connecting with groups that wouldn't be interested, and therefore the time invested
mhm,
would be a mitigating factor, and they should be optimizing the end users, the archetypal end users, you might call it, that they would want to go to, and that they then focus their discovery in that industry to get
mhm,
more information, to get some level of statistical analysis that they could say, yes, if we approached 30 or 40 more companies like that, we would have a group of people that would be wanting to use it, to pay for it, and then to advocate for it with their
mhm,
other collaborators. And that was something that was interesting, was that they definitely made some they pivoted not the
mhm.
technology, but they pivoted the type of end user that they saw would actually be helpful for it.
And the beauty of that is not only did that completely de-risk and change their trajectory and save them so much time and potentially resources, but something that I love about iCore that we kind of touched on in there is it's okay to be wrong. You're going to make these hypotheses. You're going to make with just educated guesses who you think your customer is, but the different stakeholders who influence whether or not the technology is adopted and the reasons why. You could be totally wrong, and that is celebrated in this process. No one has all the answers to start. That was sort of something I thought when I first got into entrepreneurship. Boy, I need to act like I know everything. I better figure everything out right away. In fact, it's quite the opposite. If you just make these guesses, you'll validate or invalidate them through these conversations. And that's the information that will guide you. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that example, Peter.
Yeah, I think that comes down to like you're testing a hypothesis.
Mhm,
You think you know exactly what the customers want.
mhm,
Um, Often we don't, because we don't represent the customer base that we're selling to. There may be, and as a result, you might say we're going to put a question mark in our what we think is the greatest challenge faced by our customers. And until we speak to those potential customers, we don't know if that is the biggest challenge. There may be an underlying aspect that they need to get done, and we should project a solution towards that need, and all the other needs fall into line because you've focused on that actual really underlying challenge. Plus, you don't want to be selling something because then you get the, oh, this is nice to have, versus it's going to be wanted as soon as you open the door because they've told you this is what they want. They've given you that story of, this is what we do right now. If you could produce this, this would solve all of our challenges. I'm like, okay, we're now going to go back and develop that because we know that type of customer will want it, and that archetypal end user will want it. So, great. And as I said, thank you, Kieran, for reminding those online that please do bring up a question if you'd like myself or Dave to talk about it. I guess another one is we talk about going out and doing sort of customers discovery and talking to potential clients. What are some of the effective ways that you've seen teams do that? Like, what are some of the best channels to do those? Is it sort of cold LinkedIn chats? Is it warm introductions from people that know people? Because you guys have as you were saying just before we got going, that you have a Monday, Thursday approach about these sessions, whereas in Alaska we have a weekly. So you've got to get very fast up to connections, whereas in Alaska, yes, we've still got 3 weeks rather than a week and a half, but you've still got to try and get to that 20 interviews in a very short time frame. If you're in the business world, you're probably doing 20 interviews a day. But so as a result, what are some effective ways that you have seen or you recommend to the teams in your programs to get those cold contacts or those semi-warm introductions?
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess I'll predicate this by saying one thing that really surprised me about iQor, and I think still sort of sometimes surprises me, is how generous and kind strangers can be with their time. And so it can feel like, wait a minute, how am I going to get anyone to talk to me, especially if I don't know anyone? And yes, not everyone will volunteer their time to chat with you, but I've been quite surprised, even on that team and technology I mentioned earlier in the example. I mean, a lot of them are trying to get doctors on a call, and some of the busiest people you can imagine, and surgeons even, and they were quite kind to do it. So, but the ways that I think can help with that are, I'm not opposed to doing the cold outreach on LinkedIn. If you don't have sort of those warm leads, sometimes you will, sometimes you might know some people in your network. Amazing. That, of course, that will always be a little bit easier. But a lot of times you won't have that, or that will dissipate after a few. And if you really want to collect these data points, not presenting yourself as a startup founder, or as, I have this idea. What do I'd love to talk with you about it. Because right then the sales shield goes up. Oh, they're trying to sell me something. It's a lot harder to get someone to invest their time in you if they feel that way. But if you can present yourself and if you're in NSFI core, you're a student in the course. So as a student, a researcher, just someone who really wants to learn more from someone's expertise, I say ask for 15 minutes or 10 or 15 minutes, even aim for 45. I think it's a lot easier to give, or at least in their mind, to give that short amount of time. And then you'd be surprised that once people start talking about themselves, because that's what you're really doing in these interviews. You're not presenting your idea or your technology. You're just trying to learn a lot more about their priorities, their flows, their biggest problems, their most urgent needs, and their challenges. And for all of us, we kind of like to talk about ourselves. So once people get rolling on that, great stuff comes out. And then, of course, asking at the end of an interview, hey, is there anyone else that you would recommend that I talk to that you might know based on this? And people that's another great way to get those connections. So if you can go to any events in your space where like these types of stakeholders would be that you want to talk to, that's always an amazing way to do it. But barring that, I think, and even on LinkedIn, you can search by, not just the job title, but even, if you're a college alum from, say, University of Alaska Fairbanks, you can actually search by company and by alumni of that school. That's super. I found that to be very effective of just like finding some sort of a connector, some sort of connective tissue. Last thing I'll mention is looking at even past conferences. I mentioned going to a conference or a trade show, but you can look at like past speakers at conferences in your space. Great way to email them, say, oh, hey, I saw you spoke on this topic, topic X, whatever it may be. Like fascinating. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to join, but do you have like 10 minutes next week? I would love to learn more about this. I saw you're an expert on this topic. And so that's sort of a nice, a personalized interlude in. But Peter, I'd be curious. I mean, you've been teaching iCore for a number of years now. So what are your sort of recommended best practices to foster these connections?
Yeah, good. Thanks for passing the question back to myself, and I appreciate that. And it's good because it's good to get two different perspectives of yourself that interacts with a very large conurbation of community members being in the Bay Area versus ourselves in Alaska, where the population of Alaska is small, like a third of the size of Seattle, let alone San Francisco or Oakland or Berkeley. So for us, I definitely think, and that comes to the opportunities for Alaska innovators, is use the ecosystem, use the network, because we are 1.5 degrees of separation if you think of the Kevin Bacon 7 degrees. So that the reason why with the programming that we provide, I connect the teams with a member of the Center ICE team. They might be able to say, oh, do you know somebody in this industry? If we don't, we probably know somebody who's in that industry. We're just at that point of like, we can connect them. So somebody mentioned something to me about working at the speed of trust. And I think sometimes that, can you connect me to this person, gets that first, oh, I'll respond to that email because I know Peter, or I'll respond to the email because I know Kieran or Ashley, because they've made the introduction, but the team does all of the work after that. It's just open the door, and then it's the team's responsibility. I'm not going to check back in with the person and say, did the team reach out to you? Because that's the team's responsibility. That's the team's work. They have to put the work in to get the insight from the interviewee. I'm not going to set up the Zoom. I'm not going to do all of that. But I just get that, hey, you're in this particular industry. Here's a connection. So it's sort of like it's like using my old school Rolodex of network people to say, oh, this is a person to talk to. Here's their info. I'll get you in touch, and then step back. And that's been the LinkedIn works well, especially for people that are reasonably well connected in their industry already, because they can contact somebody that might be at the payer level, but often it's getting in at that base ground level of the users. And that's where we look to use our network to support those Alaskan teams if it's an area that is new to them, especially those early stage innovators. That's been what I've seen a very successful approach for all of the cohorts that we've run in Alaska. The successful ones have said, hey, you're the instructors, how can you help me as well? They bring their own names. And I'm always like, well, why do you want to speak to that person? What's the benefit? It's like, oh, they're a such and such CEO of this company. I'm like, yes, that's a nice name, but why? Like the question is like, why? What's the hypothesis that you're testing by talking to that person? And I think that's the biggest thing, is that just like if you guys are like, hey, go and use LinkedIn, you always got to say, oh, you want to speak to such and such CTO of a company. Let's say you're a software as a service company. And then you go, you want to speak to this person. And I'm sure you guys do, is like, well, why? Like, what's the return for your time and theirs for that conversation? You want to test a hypothesis. You've got a question that you want to answer through that conversation. And so I think it's platforms like LinkedIn are extremely helpful because it gives you a one port of call to get a lot of information. But again, as you said, alumni, people that have been in the program before, that know the philosophy of iCore, just it's warm introductions and the speed of trust is extremely important, especially if you've got a quick turnaround where you can't just pick up the phone and call people for 8 hours a day and you're not in a sales role. I think that's been the most, at least what I've seen, the most effective. And yeah, you're right in terms of like a 10-minute conversation of like, hey, if you've got 10 minutes, can turn into 30, can turn into 45. because you've got a captivated individual that wants to share their knowledge and share their information with others. It's hard to tie somebody down for an hour. But the question is what are you getting out of that hour? Whereas if you ask somebody, hey, can you do 15 minutes? They're probably going to do, even if they do 15, they're probably going to do 20, because you've always got that, who else can I talk to? And you do that just at the end. So you keep going as long as you can go until the person says, sorry, I've got to go off to something else. So that always asking.
Surprisingly go long sometimes. Sorry. Peter.
Exactly. No, I was going to add is people, the captivated individuals that give you the most information, they will go well beyond the time that you ask them, because they're the ones you want to communicate with and connect with as part of the process. So I guess my next question is, or discussion for the two of us is, how can those listening in today and online just connect with the hub itself? Like we mentioned about different cohorts that you guys have won a month, and we're in the middle of one here right now at UAF. How can teams engage with the hub? How can they learn more about what's available? Because they might want to go through I-Corps and UAF doesn't have a cohort for 2 months. So as somebody that's at the prime organization and you and your team manage the website, how can teams find out about a cohort, learn more about the hub, and connect with the other equivalents of ourselves that lead the programs in those other institutions?
Yep. Yeah, great question. And yeah, our website is nwicorps.org. And the beauty of this hub started in January 2025. So we're fairly young and newly minted. But the collaboration has been amazing, because now, instead of being in the Bay Area and having to go to the UC Berkeley led course, which, by the way, it always has been, it's not just for UC Berkeley students or faculty. It's for any entrepreneurs. We call them teams. You have to have a team, 2 people on it, but you don't have to have a company yet. You can just have a startup idea, early stage, perfectly timed. So it's always been fine to just be part of the regional community. But now we've supercharged that, and now we have this collaboration going all the way up the Pacific Northwest, and that's a real strength now of all our programs, I think. So if you are you have a team, you're in Alaska, you can participate in any one of our hub courses. So not only is Berkeley running a course every month, but our partners, University of Washington, Oregon State, University of California, Irvine, the list goes on. We have 8 total. So we're always, not always, but pretty constantly offering courses. And you can see them all if you go, the ones that are open now. If you go to our website and click on regional courses, we call them regional courses, and they're all free. There's no cost whatsoever to participate, and you are just as eligible, if you're in the audience, to participate in one of the courses taught by Peter himself, that are hosted by UAF, as you are. And personally, I'd be thrilled to get some teams from Alaska in the next Berkeley cohorts. We've got one coming up. Applications open now for one in November, so that's a shameless plug if you're interested. But I think the beauty of the hub is that we can collaborate, and we can cross-pollinate, and we can get teams from all over into any one of our courses and resources and offerings. And so I think that's a very exciting part of being part of this hub.
Yeah, I would agree. Like right now, there is a UC Santa Cruz kickoff event this week. There is a UC Irvine one that would be starting the end of October. There's a Berkeley one, as you said, November. There's a UC Davis one in October. There's a Berkeley one, December. Both life sciences and STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math. UC Irvine, Oregon State is happening in January. There's University of Washington in January. And then right now we are in the middle of one. We're at the halfway through week 2. I was actually chatting to one of the teams just before this webinar about their discovery process and who they might be wanting to talk to. how they do this rather than selling the solution, determine the challenge and the need. We're in week 2 of 4 here in Fairbanks, and our next one that's Alaska based in terms of the instructor. And I think that's something that Dave says is we've got these instructors and programs from the UAF campus all the way down into Central and Southern California, but we're here for people at the time in their journey. And what we look to do across the hub is make it such that there is somewhere in our institutions a programming going on at some time during the year. And the idea is the entrepreneurs have a need when it works for them rather than when it works for our schedule. We want it to be a program that you can jump into that will benefit you with your innovative idea. Maybe you're using this as a framework to launch towards non-dilutive research funding, or you're wanting to de-risk an idea that you could potentially pitch in a competition or pitch for some venture funding or some investment funding. Is the I-Corps program gives you that training that you can transition through to the national program, and then from the national program into the SBIR, STTR route. But it's all about, in a controlled environment through the instruction, the ability to de-risk some of these innovative ideas to then be able to demonstrate now we have a customer base that would want the product when we're ready to roll it out and turn it into a business, or go after research and development funding from the National Science Foundation, for example, that has SBIR and Small Business Technology Transfer grants, which is university and industry working together.
Yeah,
so
and I'm sorry, go ahead, Peter.
No, go ahead, Dave.
Just to bounce off of that, I think it's a great point. So the NSF SBIR it's a non-dilutive grant. It's from the National Science Foundation for, early stage companies, frequently high risk, high reward technologies. Over $300,000 in grant funding for phase 1 to the company. And the phase 2, which would come, a couple of years later, you have to meet many different thresholds, but that's over $1 million. I've just heard from they were teams when they did our program just a couple of years ago, who 2 of them just won NSF SBIR phase 2s, over $1 million to their company, which is just phenomenal. And the NSF created I-Corps from the NSF SBIR. They were getting all these like great sounding companies and technologies, and the NSF was giving all this funding out, but those companies, so many of them were fizzling. And so they thought, how do we strengthen in the pipeline? And they realized this methodology, the NSF I-Corps methodology, is the best possible way for any founder to do that. So they created NSF I-Corps, which I think it's just maybe 12, 13 years old program. That's pretty young, as a means to really help early stage entrepreneurs get this validation. And then when you try and get funding, whether it's from an angel, a venture capitalist, or of course non-dilutive funding like the NSF SBIR, you can say, hey, I've spoken to over 100 of my customers. This is what their biggest problems are. This is what their most urgent needs are. This is what their process for adoption is. These are their biggest problems, and how with this technology, I can solve them. I just need the funding to go out and really build this. So that's a very powerful message to send to any potential investor.
I agree. And I think the other one to highlight is when you're doing these discovery processes and you're learning from the people that you're interviewing, it's not like you're then going to develop it for Peter Webley. You're not going to develop it for Dave. You're not going to develop it for Kieran. You're going to determine, who do we represent as a archetypal customer? Because what you're doing is you're building up a evidence that there is a customer segment and that there is an industry and a group of potential and customers that want your solution when you have got some investment or got some funding to build it. But you want to build it to say, oh, Peter and Dave represent university program directors. So therefore, if I spoke to 6 other program directors, I'm going to learn the same thing. Whereas Ashley and Kieran are a different archetypal end user to a product, because they are a different time in their career, or they've got a different available funds to purchase something extra. As a result, you want to capture your archetypal user rather than say, hey, I've developed everything for Peter. And I'm like, okay, well, you've got one customer. And I think that idea of being able to demonstrate and provide the evidence through those interviews of these are the customers that would want the product, then you become a good investment, whatever the investment is. You become you've de-risked that this is going to not lead to a scalable company or a growing company or a good return on the investment of wherever the investment has come from, whether it's federal funding through the National Science Foundation, or if it's an investment from somebody else, or even a bank loan type of investment. You've demonstrated that you are building something that people want, and they want it today and will continue to want updates as you develop. And the more that you can do that, the more you have the evidence that you can back up, and therefore whoever is the person you're presenting or pitching to can see the value of wanting to continue to work with you and partner with you as you grow and as they become the growing part of your customer base.
Yeah, spot on. Last quick thing I'll add to that is while you're never going to do sales in I-Corps, it's not that unusual, I think, for later first customers to frequently come from these interviews. You can follow up with them and 9 months later, 1 year later, hey, remember we had that conversation? You said if someone could do X, save you this amount of time, produce this revenue, whatever it may be, like that would mean Y to you. You would, that would be a hair on fire problem to solve. That would mean so much to you. Well, based on our conversation and many, many others, I've developed that. That person will take your call. They want to listen to you then. And it's not that uncommon for first customers to eventually come from these conversations. So that's kind of the power of I-Corps.
Yeah. And also a part of the national program is to have an industry mentor. And you may find your industry mentor because it's somebody you interviewed as part of your customer discovery. So you never know how you're going to interact with these beneficiaries of those conversations. They might just be a one and done, and you're like, thank you, you gave me some insight, you gave me something useful, but no more follow-up. Or, as you say, they could be a future customer, they could be a future partner that goes, oh, if you develop that, I want to be on that train, I want to be with you on the journey. Or they could become like somebody that advocates and supports it, but hasn't been involved in the original development of whatever the original discovery or innovation or invention would be.
Only good things can happen from having these types of conversations.
Correct. Yes, and you don't know until you've chatted to somebody if you're building something that people want. And getting out of the classroom, getting out of the building is always the thing. I remember when I first interacted with somebody that was teaching I-Corps I remember the individuals were in a room and there was a team unsure what to do. And he said, okay, who do you want to talk to? And they said, this person. So he picked up his cell phone, dialed the number and said, talk to them. That was his way of telling them, you've just got to get out there. You've just got to call. And the person picked up and they had a conversation for about 10 minutes, but that's what he said. He's like, sometimes you've just got to get a little bit out of your comfort zone, but it's that first one, especially if you're somebody that's not used to just doing cold calls. And then once you've had a couple of them, you're like, oh, right, who's the next person we're going to go and talk to? We're going to wander down the corridor and grab that person and ask them a question because you've built the confidence. And really, you're just discovering more and more about what your potential end user wants. I've got another question. We've spoken about this being, many of the teams are connected with the academic environment. It could be in academic intellectual property or academic developed projects. There are some community teams. What have you seen as the makeup of a team that gets the most out of it? I'm not going to say successful because success can be defined in many different ways, but what have you seen the most effective team makeup that's gone through and got the most out of the program? Sort of, is it all faculty? Is it a mixture of disciplines? Sort of, what have you seen as being an effective dynamics of a team?
Well, that's a really good question. A couple thoughts. Not uncommon is it for there to be like one, maybe I guess really highly technical, like the faculty, the PhD student, the postdoc matched with like a more, I don't know, like an MBA student or something like that. So those can be very powerful teams together. But I guess, I don't know, I'd be curious if you agree with this, Peter. I mean, in some ways, I think like the resume background or the job background or the technical background might be in terms of like the teams who really, I guess, get the most from it. It might just be just having that like genuine, curiosity,
Yeah,
and that drive for curiosity and that openness to curiosity too, of that
right.
I want it all. And maybe it's bad news. Maybe it invalidates my hopeful hypotheses, but even that, I welcome that. Like I want to know all the gems because that will help me. And that sort of drive also, like I want to delight my customer. I want to know everything about them so that I can really help them, so I can solve their problems, and sort of having like a real genuine desire for that, because that way you're going to be wanting to talk to as many of them as you can. You're going to have that push to dig in and get it, and you can get this, so you can get this right and make it something that's very special and really solves their problem. So I think if you have that, teams who have that will take them very far. But I'd be curious on your thoughts.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The curiosity side. Also, just passionately interested about how the product or what they've developed could have a difference. Like
Mhm.
I'm thinking of just some of the team from within the centralized team and their background. It's like Kieran, who's here helping us moderate, is come from the East Coast. He's a graduate of Dartmouth, and he's joined us as a fellow. But he's also interested in the mariculture and ocean science space. He was, as a result, he hears about a project that's of interest and he's got a passion about, and he wants to go and learn more and how he can support and connect with that person, even if he's not involved in any of the tech development, any of the IP, but just he's got a passion and an interest in it and how it could be more than what it is. And I think that side of it, that you can then sort of you're not getting people making taking up phone calls or Zooms or invites. It's like, oh, okay, well, let's keep going, because you've got that passion, that the curiosity of like learning more about the whole ecosystem is helpful, but also just the passion to want to see the project that you've worked on be more than what it is at the moment. And that means that you will persevere through no responses in 2 days. You will sort of feel like, oh, I'm going to call this next person. And so that's one. And then I think the other one is a good variety of the very heavy technicals and those that have maybe got a little bit more of the outgoing ability to make calls. That if you have something that's very a group that's like really focused in the weeds and the technicals, they're not probably going to get as much out of the insights. Whereas if you have somebody that's technical, that can understand, oh, this is how we should tweak the product or the solution, but you've also got a team member, and I'm thinking as you go towards nationals, is if you've got that team member that can do those calls, can be a little bit more extroverted, a little bit more out there in terms of just walking up to people and asking questions, that's when you get some good dynamics of the expert, the scientific or the technical expert, along with the sort of introvert or the extroverted sort of talkative, innovating person. The two together work really well. You don't always get that at the region level because the teams are probably coming out of similar degree programs or similar labs. But those are some of the things that I've found being to be successful. Yeah, curiosity for 100%. Agree with you on that. It's just if you're curious about making a broader impact from the work that you're developing, that's going to hold you in good stead, whether you take this to all the way to a company or just go off into the private sector and join innovative businesses. That curiosity is going to steed you well in your job wherever you go. And then, as I said, the other one is just a passion for what you're working on. Will get you through those hard hours of nobody responding.
Yep.
So we do have a question from Ashley, who's here as part of the Sunrise team. And what's the best way to find team members? So if you have just you're the innovator, How do you have recommendations, I guess would be the question. What recommendations on ways that team members can be found for teams that are a single person or are looking for additional skills to be brought to the team?
That is a very good question. That comes up. I don't know how often this comes up to you, Peter. I definitely get this question not uncommon. It's a really important question because who your teammate is. I mean, it's just such a big commitment. Yes, maybe for I-Core, it's a course, it's finite. And if you do an I-Core course with someone, you don't have to continue with them permanently, of course. But who your co-founder is, who your teammate is on the journey is profoundly important. I always sometimes look at it if you don't have one, but you want to find one. I think I-Core is the perfect incubator as like a test run too. You will work very closely together with at least one other person. You'll see all the ins and outs of how what it's like to work with them, how invested they are, what they put in, and you know it's the course is a lot of work, and it's serious. So it's a great sort of test bed. I'm like, is this the sort of person I want to work with longer? So that doesn't exactly answer the question. It's something we've thought a lot about. We and Peter, we've talked a little bit about doing it like some matching as a hub or doing some events. I do, if someone needs a teammate, and I will always keep them, if they let me know, I'll always keep them top of mind. And like if I meet someone, I've connected a handful of teams. I think just going to like events in any way could be a good way to do it. If there's anything that's in sort of that topical domain where there might be that overlap. It's something I've pondered a lot of. I don't know the exact right answer though, but Peter, are there either initiatives in Alaska that you know of or other ways that you've seen good teams come together? And sometimes it's also being okay with like let's partner for I-Core, let's see how it goes. And no expectations. And that way, you know, it ends in a finite time within 10 days or 4 weeks, whatever it may be. And that sometimes can at least be like you don't have to have all the answers to start, and you can see how it goes from there, and with its sort of time boxed program.
Yeah, I would agree with what you've said so far. The other one I would say is while we are instructors and leads of the programs at our institutions, we also represent an organization in our institution. Like you sit within a group where there's a boss of the group and there's a director of the program, and the people that you connect with on a regular basis are not just those in the I-Core program.
Mhm.
Just like at Center Ice, if somebody said, "Hey, I saw a promotion for your I-Core programming. I've got this idea. Is it a good fit?" My first reaction is, "I'd love to learn more,"
Mhm.
because I might know somebody in the industry or in the area that could be a good partner for the I-Core regional, that
Yep.
could just be helpful to get you up through the program, to give you that exposure to the custom discovery process. They could become a co-lead in the future. You might find somebody during it, but unless you reach out to the organizing center or group that manages the regional teams. So, for example, you guys, it's the HASC. For us, it's us at Center Ice, and then you look down all the other institutions in the hub. They all sit inside a organization. So that network inside that organization can be brought to the idea. Like if somebody reached out to me and it was in a particular discipline, I talk to the team at UAF that are part of it and say, "Hey, this team's interested in I-Core, or this person wants to go through I-Core, but they're on their own. Do we know of somebody in this particular area? Do we know of a student? Do we know of a community member that'd be interested to join?" And it's that network is just like you don't know what your customer needs unless you ask
Mhm.
them. You don't know if your ideal partner's out there until you reach out. And the best way to reach out is reach out to whoever is the instructor for that upcoming cohort, because they probably are inside an institutional larger network.
Mhm.
Um, and then they do the warm introductions. So let's say you're an engineering student, you've got this really cool idea, but you don't know who the right faculty member is to work with. here at UAF, I would say get in touch with us and we'll point you to say, oh, it's this faculty member or this faculty member, rather than emailing every single faculty member and hoping they pick up. It's that warm introduction, find that network connection to then potentially apply to be in the regional program. And so I think going to events is a good one, sort of. But again, those that are less engaged in conversations are going to struggle. They prefer the emailed first introduction. So I always, if someone emails me, I say, if I think the project's a good fit for ICOR, I'll just say, love to have a chat. Here's my contact information. Here's how you can set up a meeting with me. If that doesn't work, then I'll probably connect them with someone else in the team. We've got Ashley and Kieran here. I'll maybe say, hey, Kieran, I can't do 2 o'clock tomorrow. Can you do 2 o'clock tomorrow with this person? And he'll just have a chat. And that chat could lead to who knows what. So for me, it's use the representative in your local institution because they themselves are a network. You're a network to the Berkeley community, the Berkeley University community, the Berkeley community as a whole, just like we're a network to the University of Alaska community, whether it be inside the academic environment or outside. So going to events, another great opportunity, but I think also think about that same process of finding warm introductions versus sending out random emails and trying to do the cold find a partner type of thing. Obviously, there's LinkedIn groups, there's other social media networking approaches, but that is not always easy for those that may not be accustomed to doing cold introductions. Say, hi, would you join my ICOR team? It's going to be a little hard for some people to go through that process. So I think reach out to the somebody at the institution that runs the program.
Yeah, and I think I think in many ways, it's almost a novel strength that you have, Peter, and Alaska has, because you're more close knit. Just from having conversations, of course, I build out my network, but like Berkeley can be so decentralized and so big, whereas like there's just a tighter knit communal feeling. I think that's a real strength. But I'll also add, hey, if someone was ever open to having a teammate from the Bay Area who was in Alaska, let me know.
Yeah.
I think it'd be very exciting to match up a team, cross-regional team with complementary backgrounds, so keep me in mind. I would love to I keep a list of like anyone I hear from, and then there was someone I met 9 months ago. I just matched him. He just did our ICOR course last month. He ended up getting matched with a postdoc at Berkeley. It took me 9 months, but I did match them, and they did participate, and they had a great experience. So I think it'd be really, really fun to have a Berkeley UAF or Berkeley, just anywhere in Alaska match.
Well, I think that really highlights the benefit that can come from having this hub network. Is the team does not have to be all from one geographical region. It would be really a massive highlight to be able to say, hey, we just had a team go through a regional that was collaborative across states. That would be kind of a really cool thing to be able to say, is that not only are the hub collaborating, but the individuals in the states where the hub is operating are collaborating. And that would be a really interesting one. And we've got some thoughts about how to connect university-based projects with some of the programs that you have down there. And I think this would be could be a really cool way to have a joint team across the hub, that team members are from different states, but within the same institutions that are part of the hub.
All right, that's call to the audience, Peter.
That's call to the audience. We're also being recorded, right. So and we're held to that I didn't put a timeline on it. I just said it'd be really good. So I don't have a smart goal or requirement, but really great question, Ashley. So coming up to the last few minutes, so we've got cohorts coming up where they're going to determine which is the best fit for them, and that they're going to submit their application. And let's say they submit their application and they're reviewed by that cohort and they're accepted. What's the best way that you've seen, and obviously I'll answer from my side, that you've seen for a team? What's the best way for a team to prepare from that date of, hey, you're accepted into the University of Washington January 2026 ICOR program? What's some of the best ways that a team can prepare so they can get going from day one of that first session?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say leverage as much of the lead time as you can, because iCore it goes fast. Whether the course is 10 days or 3 or 4 weeks, like it does go fast. So you'll get a decision. You're going to have at least 2 weeks or so ish. So leverage that time to really start to make these hypotheses. Hey, who do I think my customer is and why? What do I think they really care about? What's the problem that they face, or what would they value to have delivered to them? And again, you could be right, you could be wrong. It's okay if you're like, wait a minute, I don't know how to do these interviews. The interviews only count once the course officially begins. And in that first session, in the first couple of sessions, we're going to do much deeper dives into like best practices on, hey, how do I conduct these interviews? So scheduling the interviews, I think, is something you can start to do ahead of time. And that's also one that again is, framing yourself as not necessarily as the founder, asking for 15 and for 45, or reaching out to some of those potentially warm intros that you might know, or warm contacts. And then try and schedule those out. So that way your focus once iCore begins is simply on learning, hey, how do I conduct these? What are the best practices? You're going to learn a lot more about that than I core. And then B, like conducting the interviews, taking in that proverbial data and sort of synthesizing it. So I think the more you can leverage that lead time to really like foster those connections and get those interviews in place will serve you super well. And the more interviews you do, just like any data, one data point is interesting, but getting 20, 25 is where the magic starts. So, Peter, what have you found from your experiences?
I definitely think sort of laying out that first group of interviews, but remembering why you want to interview them. Like, don't
Mm-hmm.
just pick a group and go, oh, I'm going to interview these people, because you'll
Mm-hmm.
spend at least on the UAF one, the Alaska-based one, because it's a different time frame. You'll get to the end of the first week and go, well, I've not learned anything. And that's like, well, because you haven't thought about why you want to interview these people versus I just want to interview this person because they're high up in a company that I think is going to be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. Two is watch the pre-instructional videos because they're
Yep.
extremely helpful. Even though you get these emails saying, "Hey, there's this video link and this video link and this video link," it's like watch them. The number of teams that
Mm-hmm.
watch them then ask really interesting questions in the webinar, in the sessions, because they're like, "Oh, I saw this and this and this," and then so that really is helpful because they're there for your benefit. They're there to help you be able to, from day one, jump into the process and start to test those hypotheses. And then the other one is, I guess the other one is, think about what your weekly goal is going to be. Think of a SMART goal, like as Dave said, that the Berkeley ones are, was it Tuesday, Thursday, Thursday. So you need to have a goal between the first session and the second session to meet your 20 by 10 days time. So think of a SMART goal, something that's specific, that's measurable, that's achievable in that time frame. So think about, do I want to speak to X number of individuals who are end users? Well, focus on those and don't get swayed by, I'm going to speak to potential partners. It's like focus on a goal to get your insights to move to the next level of analysis. Because that way then you can define, oh, it's achievable in that 4 weeks or 2 weeks to get to the 20 plus, because it's 20 is minimum. But the more, as they says, the more you do, the more information you gain. So I think defining timely goals for the team is important, and then watch those pre-instructional videos because they're there for your benefit, not just an email that we're sending out with links and hyperlinks. Because you'll get that information to watch beforehand. You can go and find documents about the business model canvas, and there's a lot of information out there, and it's fantastic information. But I think the instructional videos are really helpful. And then maybe if you're in a community where there's been a number of cohorts, maybe speak to somebody that's gone through one and just say, hey, what's the time commitment? What are some best practices that you saw? Because we're here to help and provide insight and training, but it's the teams going through that process, and therefore just being more informed about what you're going to have to do and what's expected of you. Therefore, you can set your time management during that time frame. And then the other one, a best way to prepare is just remember to have fun doing it as well as gaining insight, because that side of it will mean that you will generate benefit from it. You're there to discover what your future potential customers want, and turn it into a conversation, turn it into something that's an enjoyable chat rather than a interview question 1, interview question 2, interview question 3, because you'll get more insight through that conversation if it becomes a conversation and not like a job interview type of questions. It's nice to have some questions to frame the conversation, but you also want it to be something where you gain the insight you want and drill down to some of those important topics. And that can often come from just a chat type of conversation. And that's where you can get some of the really detailed insights, because they feel engaged and listened and heard. So they'll tell you something that they may not have said if it was just like, can you answer question 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? And that way, then you get more of that sort of passionate response from the person you're talking to. So we're now coming up to the half-hour stage. So we're at the end of today's webinar. Hopefully, for those listening today and watching afterwards, you've learned a little bit more about what is I-Corps, and what is the philosophy behind I-Corps, and why it is such I see an essential tool that people can develop in their toolbox as they're looking at, is this idea that we have actually got potential opportunity beyond where it is in the idea stage or in the early innovation stage. There is the QR code that I'm showing you here that will take you to the sheet in our interface to be able to sign up for a cohort. And then when you go down through that list, you'll be able to select the one that you want to join based on what's available. And as Dave said, there's some coming up from his institution. You can also go to the website here and then go to the regional programming, and you'll be able to see the programming available. And this is just a snapshot from early this month that I grabbed. And as I said, there's a few more added since I put together this deck. But I want to thank Dave for his time here today, giving this time back to the entrepreneurial community we have here in Alaska. Thank you both, Kieran and Ashley, for being part of the Sunrise team supporting this program. And as I say, I-Corps, who knows when it's right, but you won't know when it's right unless you apply. So we're always here to have conversations. We're open for chats about your innovative projects and your innovative ideas, but you don't know unless you reach out. So please send us an email, find us on the Sunrise website, and then if I-Corps is the right time, then there'll be a program and a cohort for you somewhere within our Northwest Region hub. So Dave, I'd like to thank you for your time. Is there any final words you'd like to say?
I'll just echo that. Thanks to you for putting this on, and everyone on the team, Kieran, Ashley, and this was terrific. So great to be here to connect with the vibrant entrepreneurship community going on in Alaska. Very much looking forward to having some teams apply and hope to get you involved. And I-Corps really is a magical process. So look forward to having more Alaskan entrepreneurs involved in NSF I-Corps.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dave, and thank you everybody else. And that is it from today's webinar. There will be more webinars and in-person events here in Alaska, in Fairbanks, as a part of Alaska Entrepreneurship Week. So akew.org, and we will have another event tomorrow. We'll have a couple of the grad students from one of our collaborative projects, one student from the University of Fairbanks and one student from the University of Rhode Island, talk about their graduate study research and the commercial and exterior broader impacts of what they're developing from that project. So that'll be tomorrow. So take a look out for those on the akew.org website. Otherwise, thank you everybody for the day, and see you all at the next Alaska Entrepreneurship Week event. Thank you all.